Hey guys, tonight we slip backward in time, past paved roads and phone chargers, past hot showers and vaccines, all the way to 1347 Europe. You're in a dim little cottage with a thatched roof, walls made of wattle and daub, and a floor that's mostly mud with just enough hay to pretend it's not. Your breath mists in the cold air. Chickens are probably sleeping inside with you, because, well, they're warmer than your straw mattress. The sun rises with a sour haze, and already there's shouting in the village square. Something about a ship, something about fever, but you can't quite catch it. You go outside anyway, because that's what you do. You rise, you work, you survive. But today, something's off. People are coughing. Horses are skittish. The rats seem extra twitchy. You feel it in your chest, a creeping dread you can't explain. Welcome to a world about to be turned completely upside down. A world where nearly half of Europe won't make it to the next generation. Oh, and you probably won't survive this. Just saying. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your morning starts like any other. You feed the pigs, check your turnip patch, and try not to gag at the communal latrine. It smells like every bad decision humanity has ever made in one trench. You don't have soap, just maybe a bucket of cold water and whatever herbs the local wise woman says will clean your aura. This is medieval Europe, and you're a peasant. No title, no property, no Wi-Fi. You work the land you don't own. Most of your food goes to your lord, and your taxes go to the church. You get back, well, mostly blessings and indigestion. Your clothes are itchy wool, your shoes are wooden clogs if you're lucky, and your entertainment consists of town gossip, watching turnips grow, and hoping your neighbor's goose doesn't bite you again. Spoiler, it will. But lately, there's more than just goose attacks to worry about. Word travels slowly, on horse carts and on winded messengers, but something is definitely happening. Ships docked in Sicily with dead sailors. Towns whisper of a black death. You hear that phrase and laugh, because sure, every few years, something comes to kill you. A war, a famine, the common cold. But this has a new smell. It smells like the end. Historians still argue whether it was the Mongol siege of Kaffa that flung infected corpses over the walls and into history, or if it simply slipped into Europe quietly, on the back of a flea. Either way, the death has started to spread. And here's the thing you don't know yet, it's already here. A cart rattles into town. A trader climbs down, pale as goat's milk, and collapses right there in the mud. People crowd around. You stay back, gut instinct. The baker leans in and gets a faceful of blackened glands. He'll be gone in days. The village priest starts praying harder. Not for the dying, for himself. You catch him slipping silver into his satchel. Probably off to the next town with better odds. Your life, already simple, gets simpler still. No markets. No traveling. No church feasts. No fairs. People start walling themselves in, crossing themselves compulsively, and whispering into their elbows. You wonder if this is it, if this is how it ends. A cough, a swelling, a burial. Here's a fun fringe fact. Some folks think the disease was punishment for bathhouses. Yep. Apparently, cleanliness was suspicious. If you bathed too much, you must be prideful or lustful. So naturally, towns start closing bathhouses, which is adorable in a horrifying kind of way. Meanwhile, the rats? Oh, they're having a party. You see them skittering under doors, curling up in haystacks. You don't yet know they're carrying fleas that are carrying Yersinia pestis, a bacteria so efficient at killing, it could give war a run for its money. You try to stay clean, whatever that means. You rub garlic on your chest. You sleep with a clove in your mouth. Your aunt smudges the doorframe with ash and whispers to Saint Sebastian. None of it feels real. All of it feels terrifying. There's an ache in your back. Is it the plague? Or just from lugging water and despair all day? You don't know. No one knows. The only certainty is this: your life, your whole village, the rhythm of everything you knew, is cracking open. You meet with your neighbors. Carefully. You share a single jug of mead and watch the road. Every distant rider could be news, or doom, or both. You start calling it the Black Fog, as if the name will trap it in place. But it doesn't. It moves through your land like smoke through a forest, devouring as it goes. And yet, you go on. Because you have to. That's the secret of your kind. You grumble, you joke, you spit at the sky, but you endure. You bury the sick, bless the rain, feed the chickens. The world may be ending, but someone still has to clean the latrine. You lie down that night listening to the soft hoots of owls and the not-so-soft coughing of your neighbor. You wonder who'll be gone tomorrow. You wonder if you'll dream of something better. You pull your blanket, scratchy, straw-filled, lumpy as regret, over your face and try not to breathe too deep. After all, even the air could kill you now. You wake up coughing, but just once. Probably dust. Probably not the plague. Probably. The sun's just creeping over the edge of the horizon, hazy and weak. The village is quieter than usual. No roosters, no hammers clanging, no children squealing as they chase dogs. You sit up on your lumpy bed and count the silences. That's 3 neighbors whose chimneys haven't smoked this morning. That's not good. You trudge outside, pretending it's just another day. But the smell is different now. You've lived with animal dung, damp wood, and the occasional dead pig. This is worse. It's like rotting onions and metal and something sweet that shouldn't be sweet. A smell you'll never unsmell. You pass by the thatched hut where the blacksmith lived. His door is open, swinging. No fire in the forge. No noise. You remember when he once lifted a cow cart with one arm. He's gone now. His entire family, too. No one has touched the house yet. Superstition. Fear. Laziness. It's hard to tell. You keep walking. You tell yourself it's because you need water from the village well. But really, it's because you're afraid to stay still. Stillness feels like death. At the well, there's a single woman drawing water. Marta, the widow who talks to her sheep like they're her children. She nods at you, but her eyes are swollen. Gone, she whispers. You don't ask who. You don't need to. Now you're part of a new class, the survivors. For now. Back at home, your mother crushes herbs in a bowl. She's not a healer, but these days, everyone's pretending to be something they're not. She rubs a mix of sage and mustard on your chest and tells you to breathe it in. You do. It smells like angry salad. Keep warm, she says, as if warmth can stop a plague. Historians still argue whether warmth or cold was more deadly during the plague. Some towns burned entire bundles of aromatic herbs and resins in the streets to purify the air. Others recommended cold baths. The medical advice was creative. You do your part. You light a fire. You sprinkle rosemary on the floor. You hang a lemon peel from the ceiling. You don't know why. You just do it. Everyone's trying something, anything, to feel in control. Then comes the priest. Not yours, he fled days ago. This one's from a neighboring village. His robes are tattered, eyes sunken, voice hoarse. He gathers the villagers, what's left of them, by the church bell and tells them this is divine punishment. God is angry, he croaks. You must confess everything, even the thoughts. You kneel. You mumble sins you didn't commit, just to be safe. You say you once stole an egg. You say you watched a merchant's daughter walk by too long. You say you cursed when your roof caved in. The priest blesses you and moves on. You don't feel better. By now, every house has a mark. An X. A branch tied to the door. A ribbon. Each village makes up its own code. Yours uses black soot smudges. 1 means sick. 2 means dead. 3 means no one's left to mark the 4th. You wonder what yours will be. You wonder if someone will even come by to mark it. Quarantine isn't a word you know, but you understand the feeling. People shut themselves in. They push food out windows. They yell through cracks. You deliver turnips to an old couple by tossing them over their fence like you're feeding wolves. They don't come out. Ever. And then, the oddest thing, laughter. Real, rolling laughter. From the woods. You follow the sound, cautiously. It leads to a group of men and women, painted with ash and dancing in a circle, singing. One has a mask shaped like a crow's beak. Another has bells on her knees. They stop when they see you. One points a stick and says, "Join or leave." You leave. They're called flagellants, sort of. But not the regular ones. These are like a spin-off version. Historians still debate whether this group was religious, theatrical, or just done with everything. They parade through towns whipping themselves, chanting, trying to appease God with their pain. You'll see more of them later. Back home, your father boils onions in wine. He read somewhere, well, heard somewhere, that onion wine can draw out the poison. He drinks it, then gives you some. It tastes like guilt and regrets. You drink it anyway. A strange rumor spreads, cats are causing the plague. So naturally, people start killing them. You watch as boys chase one into a barn and don't come out for hours. That night, the rats get braver. They know no one's protecting the grain now. It's dark again. Another day gone. Your sister has a fever. Not a bad one. Just a little one. But that's how it starts, isn't it? She's hot, flushed, shaking. Your mother holds her and prays. You just stare. You count the chickens. Still 5. You count the candles left. 4. You count the days since your last laugh. Too many. You hear something outside. Cartwheels. A bell. It's the plague cart. They don't stop. They just call out, "Bring out your dead." A man down the road drags out a body. The cart clanks away. You tuck your sister in tighter. You whisper stories. You sing lullabies from when you were little. She sleeps. You don't. The fire dies. The shadows lengthen. Somewhere far away, a rooster crows. Late, confused, or maybe hopeful. You close your eyes and think, one more day. Just give us one more day. By now, the village smells different. Less like life. More like endings. You wake before dawn again, but not because of the birds. You barely hear them anymore. It's the silence that wakes you, the kind that's so loud it presses on your chest. You lie there, staring at the thatched ceiling, trying to remember what it felt like to sleep without fear. Your sister is still feverish, but she's breathing. That's your bar now. Is she breathing? Good. Another miracle. Your mother mixes vinegar and rose petals in a bowl and dips a rag into it. She dabs your sister's forehead, murmuring something half prayer, half spell. The petals cool the soul, she says. You don't question it. People are trying everything. Real remedies, fake ones, desperate ones. You hear that in a village not far from yours, they're stuffing cloves into oranges and hanging them from ceilings. Supposed to purify the air. In another village, they carry around little satchels of herbs called posies. And yes, the pocket full of posies rhyme, you know? That's not as sweet as it sounds. It's about this. About trying not to die. Historians still argue whether these medieval plague preventions helped at all, or just made people feel slightly less powerless. Maybe that was the real medicine, the illusion of control. You head outside again. It's drizzling. That fine, cold mist that soaks your clothes slowly, sneaky. The kind that clings to your bones by mid-morning. You hunch your shoulders and head to the garden. Or what's left of it. The cabbages are rotting. The carrots look suspicious. But you pull what you can. You're not picky anymore. That's when you notice it. A horse, tethered at the church. No one rides anymore unless they have a death wish or no fear. You squint through the fog and see the rider. Tall, cloaked in something that looks expensive but caked in road mud. His boots aren't local. His attitude definitely isn't. He's a physician. Supposedly. But not the kind with white coats and clean hands. This one wears a bird mask with glass eyes and a beak stuffed with herbs. You've heard of them. Plague doctors. Like living scarecrows. The mask is supposed to protect him from bad air. You don't know if it works. No one does. But it makes him look immortal. And terrifying. He walks with slow, deliberate steps, carrying a long wooden stick, not for balance, but to poke people from a safe distance. Like cattle. He doesn't speak to you. He doesn't need to. Just nods at your house and moves on. You run home and bar the door. Later, your neighbor Thomas knocks. Barely. He's coughing. You don't open the door. You hate yourself for it. But you don't open the door. This is the new etiquette. Don't answer unless you want to die. That evening, your mother insists on lighting candles in every window. She says it's to guide the angels. Or the dead. Or maybe just to feel like light still matters. One candle sputters and dies after 10 minutes. You don't replace it. Dinner is watery stew with a hint of onion and a whole lot of nothing. No bread today. The baker's gone. You chew slowly, trying to taste hope. It's not in there. You dream of feasts. Of warmth. Of normalcy. And then, someone screams. It's not the scream of grief. You know that one. It's the scream of accusation. You and your mother run out, hearts hammering. A small crowd is forming near the well, torches in hand. Always a bad sign when torches appear after dark. You push through to see the object of their fury. A girl. Maybe 15. Eyes wide with fear. Holding something. It's a doll. Woven from straw and feathers, with pins sticking out of it. They say she's a witch. That she cursed the miller's baby. That she speaks to cats. That she knows when people will die. You know her. Her name is Agnes. She once helped you pull leeches from your dog. You don't speak. You don't move. The crowd grabs her, ties her wrists. Someone suggests the river. Let the water decide, they say. Historians still debate how often witch trials actually happened during plague times, but fear makes people monstrous. And sometimes, you don't need firewood to burn someone. Just whispers and a crowd. They drag Agnes away. You go home. You don't sleep. The next morning, the air smells wrong again. Like something's missing. Hope, maybe. Or justice. But your sister? She's sitting up. Just a little. Just enough to hold a cup. You feed her thin broth and she drinks. You smile. That one moment is enough to crack open the gray sky in your chest. Still, the world hasn't softened. There are fewer people at the well now. The baker's house has gone quiet. The old man with the droopy hat hasn't shuffled past your window in days. You don't ask. You don't want answers. People stop marking the doors. There are too many. The physician leaves without fanfare. One day his horse is gone. That's all. Maybe he got sick. Maybe he got rich. Maybe he realized there was no winning here. You see a boy wearing the bird mask days later, running through the woods, laughing. Maybe he thinks it makes him invisible. Maybe it does. You take to walking the edges of the forest more often. Not because you want to leave, but because you want to remember what breathing feels like. Real air. Clean trees. Birds that don't die mid-flight. That's when you find the book. Buried under an old stump, wrapped in oilskin. You don't know who put it there. It's not in your language, but the illustrations are haunting. People with boils. Plants shaped like stars. A woman standing over a bed, holding a sprig of yarrow. A fringe remedy manual? A spell book. Historians would argue. You take it home. You keep it secret. That night, your sister smiles for the first time in days. And somehow, that smile feels like rebellion. It's been weeks now. Or has it been months? Time loses its edges when every day feels the same. Gray skies, thin stew, and the constant ache in your chest that's not quite grief but definitely isn't peace. You wake, you breathe, you survive. That's the rhythm now. But today, something's changed. Your father returns from the outer fields, his boots thick with mud and news. He's heard of a cart coming through, one piled high with salted fish and garlic, bound for the monastery in the next shire. That's as close to trade as your village has seen in a while. Most merchants stopped coming weeks ago. Some turned back. Others didn't make it. The ones who kept coming? Opportunists, mostly. They sell plague cures, brewed from vinegar and crushed emeralds. Yes, crushed emeralds. Apparently, if it's shiny, it must be healing. Historians still argue whether these gem cures were genuinely believed in or just a scam that glimmered enough to convince desperate nobles. Either way, emerald doesn't taste great. You know because you licked a pebble once out of curiosity. 10 out of 10. Do not recommend. Still, the cart news excites people. A crowd forms at the edge of the village, waiting like it's a festival. The cart rolls in just before midday. 2 oxen, 3 barrels, and a merchant with a patchy beard and suspiciously healthy color in his cheeks. He wears gloves. Doesn't get down. Just points at sacks and waits for coins to be tossed into a bucket on a stick. He's not getting close to anyone. Smart man. You watch your father trade a carved wooden spoon for a small jar of salt. It's the best deal he'll get. You're not sure what the spoon was worth, but now your soup won't taste like sadness anymore. Progress. Other villagers trade everything from herbs to hand-spun thread. Some offer services, fixing wagon wheels, mending shoes. One boy offers a song. The merchant shrugs and tosses him a hunk of hard cheese. It's weirdly festive, this grim marketplace. People laughing too hard. Smiling like their mouths forgot how. Pretending this is normal. It's not. But sometimes, pretending is its own kind of medicine. You spot Agnes's younger brother, alone near the well. He won't meet anyone's eyes. No one's spoken of her since that night. No one dares. The silence around her name is heavy, like the church bell before it rings. You walk over and hand him half your bread. He doesn't thank you. He just eats. The cart leaves in the afternoon, and just like that, the energy drains from the village again. The sky dims, and you return home, salt jar clutched like treasure. At dinner, your sister eats a whole bowl of stew. Even smiles. You think she might make it. You want to believe that. After supper, your mother brings out the old rosary. She used to pray with it every night, back when prayers felt like a bridge to somewhere. She holds it now like it's a relic. You join her, not because you believe more today than yesterday, but because rituals give shape to time. And in times like these, shape matters. You whisper Hail Marys, Our Fathers, anything that makes rhythm in your head. Outside, wolves howl. Closer than usual. Wolves were a problem even before the plague, but lately they've grown bolder. They sniff around empty houses. Dig at graves. You hear of one village where the wolves came into the square in broad daylight, looking at children like they were rabbits. Now people bury their dead with stones on top, just in case. That night, the wind howls harder. Your candle flickers. You think of the book you found in the woods, still hidden under your bed. You pull it out, open to a page with a weirdly comforting image, a man kneeling beside a sick woman, holding a single white flower to her lips. The flower looks like feverfew. You've seen it in the hills. Maybe tomorrow you'll try to find some. It's something to do. The next day, you wake before the sun and slip out before your parents notice. The forest is cool and damp, and you take careful steps, remembering where you once saw the little white petals. You find some, growing wild near a fallen log. You pick carefully, whispering to yourself like it's a spell. Come with me. Help her. Modern science hasn't confirmed whether feverfew did anything for the plague, but in medieval times, it was considered strong stuff. Headaches, fevers, bad spirits, you name it. You return home and crush the petals into warm water, then bring it to your sister. She drinks it slowly, eyeing you like you're a sorcerer or an idiot. You smile. She smirks. That's the closest you've come to laughter in days. Later that week, the priest calls a gathering. Not at the church. No one's allowed in the church anymore. Too many dead pass through. Now it's mostly used for storage and funerals. You gather under the oak tree near the field instead. He stands on a rock, pale and thin, but still wrapped in that too heavy robe. He talks of penance, of sin, of God's judgment. You've heard it before. But then he says something new. We must walk to the chapel in High Cross. It's a pilgrimage, he explains. A holy journey. Maybe it will bring mercy. Maybe God just wants to see you sweat. Historians still debate the effectiveness of these mass pilgrimages. Some say they spread the disease more. Others argue it was the only spiritual weapon people had left. Either way, it's not up for debate here. You're going. All of you. 3 days from now. Your mother starts preparing. She sews extra cloth into your shoes. Your father sharpens a stick into a walking staff. Your sister insists she's well enough to join. You're not sure she is, but no one argues. This might be her last trip either way. You fall asleep dreaming of a road winding through misty hills. You wake with sore legs and the taste of feverfew on your tongue. The day of the pilgrimage arrives with fog thick as wool and silence that feels rehearsed. No one says much. You just line up, bundle in hand, eyes avoiding one another, and start walking. It's a strange thing, moving as a group with no particular joy or destination that promises anything but another prayer. But it's also comforting in a way. You're not alone anymore. 64 villagers, give or take the coffers and hobblers, all pacing the same dirt road, all pretending this will help. The priest leads, cloak dragging, staff in hand, muttering Latin half the time and coughing the other half. You can't help but think he's got the plague already, but if he does, he's either ignoring it or betting God won't strike down someone in the middle of a mercy march. Behind you, your sister limps quietly. She hasn't said a word since breakfast. You've tied her bundle to your back alongside yours. You're not carrying much, some stale bread, dried turnips, and a tiny pouch of that feverfew you gathered. It's crushed now, mostly powder. Might be useful. Might be nonsense. The road is long and uneven, and within the first hour, someone turns back. An old woman with no family left. She just stops walking, sits on a rock, and watches the group disappear. No one says anything. You reach the first village by midday. It's empty. Or rather, it's abandoned. Chickens cluck around a toppled cart. A door swings in the wind. Somewhere, a child's doll lies face down in the dirt like it gave up trying. Historians still argue whether these empty towns were left by the dead or the terrified. Some think people just fled into the hills, leaving everything. Others say the bodies were burned, the silence engineered. But in the moment, it feels like walking into the mouth of something ancient and hungry. The priest insists on stopping at the church. He crosses himself 5 times before entering, and even then, only goes halfway in. The rest of you wait outside, counting breaths, watching the fields. That's when the dogs arrive. Stray, mostly. Mangy and thin, eyes wild, tails twitching like they haven't trusted anyone in weeks. One growls low when a boy offers it a crust of bread. You all keep your distance. Hunger makes beasts of everything. Eventually, the priest returns and announces the next leg. No rest. No sleeping here. No surprise. You march again. And here's the weird thing, this kind of group travel wasn't uncommon. During plague waves, mass pilgrimages actually surged. People walked miles just to kneel in front of a statue rumored to cry blood or to touch the hem of a robe worn by a saint who once cured a goat. Did it work? Hard to say. But when the world unravels, walking towards something sacred can feel like stitching it back together with your footsteps. By nightfall, your feet are blisters and your blisters have opinions. You camp near a ruined mill, the wheel still frozen mid-turn like it just gave up one day. Fires are banned. Smoke attracts thieves and worse. So you huddle under trees, wrap yourself in your father's old cloak, and try to pretend your stomach isn't making noise loud enough to wake the moon. Someone plays a flute. Just a soft, broken tune. No one knows who. In the distance, a wolf howls again. Closer this time. You don't sleep so much as drift in and out of fear. By the second day, the group's smaller. Some snuck off in the night. Others are just gone. One man is found sitting at the base of a tree, unmoving, staring at nothing. His wife tries to rouse him for an hour before she finally follows the others. You think about Agnes again. About how this walk feels like penance for things you didn't do. For sins the sky won't specify. You wonder if God's silence is the real punishment. Like he's watching but refuses to blink. Midday brings a strange relief. A monk appears. He's walking the opposite way, barefoot, hands clasped in prayer. His robes are patched with symbols, some you recognize, some you don't. He smiles as he passes, whispers, mercy, and keeps going. That's it. One word. Like a seed tossed in a field. The priest seems rattled. He mutters something about heresy. You keep walking. That afternoon, you pass another village. This one has bodies. They're covered with blankets, but it's clear. Shapes lying still in a churchyard. A bell hangs lopsided from the chapel tower, and a black crow sits on top like it owns the place. No one speaks. Even the children go silent. You think about how plague burial changed everything. Before, funerals were sacred, drawn-out affairs with candles and chanting. Now, it's dig fast, dump fast, burn if you have to. Some towns even employed plague pit crews, volunteers or criminals who'd haul the bodies into mass graves, often wearing wax-coated cloaks and masks stuffed with herbs. Those masks? Yeah, they looked like beaks. Giant bird heads. Ridiculous and terrifying. You've seen drawings. The funny part. People thought those beaked masks could protect you. Like the herbs would filter the bad air. Historians still debate whether those plague doctors helped or just made things worse by walking germ clouds from house to house. You try to picture one now. Hat, beak, cloak, walking through your village. Your sister would probably laugh at it. She laughs at weird things. That evening, you finally see High Cross Chapel. Perched on a hill like it's guarding something. Small, crumbling, nothing like the cathedrals in stories. But it's still standing. And in a world where everything falls, that's enough. You climb the hill in silence, knees aching, mouth dry. Inside, the chapel smells like beeswax and damp stone. The priest leads a prayer. People kneel. Some cry. Some just stare. You light a candle. For Agnes. For your sister. For whoever you used to be before all this started. As the light flickers, you feel something. Not faith, exactly, but presence. Like the world is watching you back. The priest announces you'll stay the night. In shifts. One group sleeps inside. The rest outside, under tarps or trees. You're outside, naturally. That's your luck. But as you lie on the grass, staring at stars that feel closer than ever, you realize something. You made it. Not to salvation, maybe. Not to answers, but to the top of the hill. And sometimes, surviving the walk is the holiest thing you can do. You wake stiff, your face wet with dew and your nose full of pine. Someone's already snoring nearby, sprawled under a worn blanket like a forgotten sack of potatoes. The sky is still dark, but not midnight dark. That dreamy, almost blue shade that says dawn is impatient. You stretch, wince, and sit up. Your back cracks like old wood. Your sister groans from under her cloak, curls tighter. You don't blame her. Even your dreams were tired last night. The priest announces the morning prayer with a half-hearted chant that's more croak than call. You trudge up the hill to the chapel again, your legs arguing with every step. Inside, the candles have gone out. The wax puddled around their bases looks like ghostly tears. You kneel. Not because you believe the plague will hear you and run. but because there's not much else you can do. Back then, that was the hard truth. Medieval peasants had no microscopes, no germ theory, no TikToks of doctors explaining infection vectors. You had God. You had rumors. And you had each other. But let's not forget the third leg of the medieval coping stool, folk magic. And you, dear pilgrim, are about to get a big dose of it. Later that morning, you leave the chapel with the group and follow a rocky path to a neighboring hamlet. Only 3 miles, says the priest. Which is both close and far enough to curse. The path is narrow, roots like snakes underfoot, and you swear something's watching you from the trees. Probably just a rabbit. Hopefully. This next village has a reputation. People call it Hollow Mere, and the rumor is their healer, a widow named Bruna, knows things. She meets you at the edge of the field, arms crossed, face like old bark. She doesn't smile. But she doesn't spit, either, which is basically a warm welcome in plague times. Bruna wears a necklace made of bones. Rabbit, probably. Probably. You step forward with the others. The priest does not. He mutters about ungodly tinctures, and stays back. You don't blame him, really. Bruna has a vibe. Like she once boiled a rat to cure a headache, and it worked too well. But here's the thing. Folk healers like Bruna were lifelines. Forget expensive doctors in cities, if you could even find one still breathing. Most peasants leaned on the cunning folk, herbalists, midwives, charm makers, and yes, the occasional self-declared witch. They were pharmacists, therapists, and rumor dispensers, all in one barefoot package. Bruna invites a few of you into her hut. You duck inside, and the smell nearly knocks you back out again. Mint, ash, something floral, and something distinctly fermented. She's already grinding something in a mortar. You don't ask what. Your sister sneezes. Bruna stops, looks up, and nods. Fever brewing, she mutters, and begins rummaging through a crate of herbs. Dried nettle, sage, even some powdered moss. You recognize maybe 2 of the plants. The rest look like something goats would ignore. She makes your sister drink something that tastes like sadness and pepper. Then she turns to you. Protection charm, she says, and starts wrapping red thread around 3 tiny pebbles. One has a hole in it. You open your mouth to ask why, but she slaps the charm into your palm and says, "Wear it or die." You wear it. Historians still argue whether these charms were placebo, psychological anchor, or just social theater. One theory is they worked simply because people believed they would. Another says charms helped people cope by giving them agency in a world ruled by chaos and plague. Either way, you feel a little braver with it hanging from your belt. Bruna hands out more potions, some for the sick, some for the worried well. You fall into the second category. She also gives you a wax tablet covered in carved runes. Tells you to bury it facing east under a yew tree. You don't question it. Out here, logic takes a back seat to survival, and survival will shake hands with any superstition if it helps. Outside the hut, the priest finally approaches. He glares at Bruna but says nothing. She glares back, harder. You'd place bets if you weren't broke and cursed. Eventually, Bruna sighs and tosses him a pouch of dried flowers. For sleep, she says. He mutters a Latin prayer at it and tucks it in his robe. Progress. Sort of. That night, you stay in Hollow Mere. People are quiet. It's the kind of quiet where even your thoughts try to tiptoe. Everyone's watching the sky, half expecting it to split open and pour out something worse than what's already crawling across the land. You think of the charm on your belt, the wax tablet buried near the church, the taste of Bruna's bitter draught. You also think of how strange this all feels, wearing pebbles for protection, drinking moss stew, kneeling at a chapel in the morning and a herb witch's fire pit by night. But the real strangeness. You're still here. Still breathing. Still watching your sister sleep beside you. And somehow, that's enough to keep going. Because plague may be the enemy, but hopelessness is the traitor. And the truth is, peasants didn't just survive with luck or medicine. They survived because they adapted. They trusted what they could, prayed when they couldn't, and leaned into rituals as shields against a world that wouldn't explain itself. You don't know if Bruna's charms actually do anything. But as the wind rattles the shutters and a dog howls in the far dark, you grip the string of pebbles tight in your hand. And you feel, just for a second, like maybe it will be okay. Maybe. Morning again. Except now your dreams feel like stories someone else told you. Something about a lake full of teeth and a cow that whispered secrets. You blink it away as sunlight slices through the cracks in the hut. Bruna's gone. Left before dawn, they say, off to collect wolfsbane or curse a toad, depending on which neighbor you ask. Your sister seems better. A little more color in her cheeks, a little less ghost behind her eyes. And that makes today a travel day. Back on the path, the group is smaller. 2 stayed behind, too weak to continue, or maybe just ready to make Hollowmere their last stop. Another has disappeared. Just gone. Like a puff of breath in winter air. That's how it goes. You don't ask questions anymore. You just adjust the charm at your hip and follow the trail. You're headed east now, toward a river town. They say it's still open, still trading, still alive. But before you see its wooden gates, you smell it. The rot, the smoke, the sweat of too many people packed too close. The scent clings to the trees like an omen. As you crest the last hill, the town appears. Low stone walls, thatched roofs, a tiny market square full of motion. People scurry between stalls with baskets, carts, chickens. They look healthy. Too healthy. Which makes you suspicious. Quarantine, says the priest, pointing to a small shack just outside the gates. It's surrounded by a low fence, and a man in a red hood stands beside it with a spear and a very bored expression. You're not getting in. Not yet. Welcome to medieval quarantine, where public health met paranoia. See, towns that survived the plague didn't do it by accident. They developed their own clunky, sometimes brutal protocols. One of them, quarantine travelers. Especially pilgrims. Which means you and your crew are herded into the shack like goats. You're told it's a 3-day wait. If no one gets sick, you can enter. If someone coughs too much, well, let's just say you won't be sightseeing the market. The shack is tiny. Straw on the floor, a single window the size of your fist. There's a bucket. You know what it's for. The first few hours aren't bad. You play, count the fleas, on your cloak. Your sister braids your hair just to keep her hands busy. Someone starts a story about a demon that rides pigs into barns. You laugh, mostly because you don't want to cry. But by nightfall, the shack feels like it's shrinking. Breaths get shorter. Jokes get darker. And that's when the shouting starts outside. 2 men are arguing, one from inside town, one a traveler like you. The local accuses the traveler of hiding symptoms. The traveler screams that it's just hay fever. The guard doesn't care. He drives both of them toward the woods and throws them out. You go silent. Because if there's one thing scarier than being locked in a shack, it's not being locked in one when everyone else still thinks you're contagious. Historians still argue whether medieval quarantine helped much. Some say it slowed the spread. Others argue it was too arbitrary, too easily manipulated, too dependent on how much wine the town council had that day. But one thing's certain, it gave people a sense of control. And sometimes, illusion is survival's favorite cousin. By morning, one of your group has a fever. You pretend not to notice. So does the priest. The guards do notice, but they look tired. They mutter about too many cases already, and let you stay. You hold your breath every time she coughs. You sleep in short bursts. Eat what little you have left. Drink from a bucket of rainwater that smells slightly like roof. And at last, on the 3rd day, the guard comes and says, "You're cleared." No celebration. No parade. Just a nod and a creaky gate swinging open. The market square is loud, colorful, full of vegetables you forgot existed. Someone's playing a lute badly. Chickens dart between boots. It almost feels normal. But you You walk like someone still expecting the sky to fall, because survival has made you careful. A local healer checks your sister again. She's still weak, but stable. You buy an onion to chew. It's supposed to draw the sickness down into the gut, whatever that means. You also get a tin charm shaped like a hand. The seller says it's been blessed by a bishop. You think it smells like cheese. That night, you sleep in a real bed for the first time in weeks. It's filled with straw and something bites your leg, but still, you almost cry with relief. You dream of Bruna. She's laughing. Her necklace is gone. She's stirring something in her pot, and when you lean close, you realize it's not herbs. It's hope. She stirs it anyway. You wake up. The river is rising outside. You hear it sloshing against the docks. Someone's shouting about fish prices. Somewhere, someone else coughs. You flinch. Because plague, you've learned, doesn't keep calendars. It doesn't follow rules. It waits. So you tie the red thread tighter around your belt. You help your sister out of bed. And you step back into the world, one uncertain step at a time. You survived quarantine. But that's not the same as surviving. Not yet. The stone streets of the river town feel strange beneath your feet. Smoother than the muddy village paths you've known all your life, but somehow colder too. The air here hums with a nervous rhythm, like a taut string about to snap. You can smell fish and smoke, maybe burnt rosemary. It's not the stench of death you left behind, but it's not quite life either. Your sister walks beside you, a little steadier than yesterday, though her cheeks are still hollow, eyes too wide. She squeezes your hand as a pair of boys run past, laughing like fools. You envy their noise. Laughter is a strange sound now, sharp and jarring against the silence that follows the plague. As you make your way through the market, you pass stalls selling more herbs than food, bundles of sage, rosemary, rue, wormwood, even dried lavender tied up with string. The herb woman eyes you with a toothless grin. "Burn this in your home," she rasps, waving a smoking bundle. "Keeps the foul air out." You nod like you believe her, hand already reaching into your pouch. It's not that you do believe her, but there's comfort in ritual, especially when reason offers nothing. They say the plague rides the wind like a shadow on wings, and these herbs are supposed to confuse it, scare it off. Historians still argue whether fumigation had any real effect. Maybe it helped. Maybe it masked the rot. Maybe it just made people feel like they had some sliver of control. And honestly, isn't that enough? You take the rosemary. Its sharp scent tickles your nose as you tuck it behind your ear. Then the river draws you forward. Here, it's wide and slow, more gray than blue, reflecting the thick sky like a mirror of bad dreams. Small boats bump against the docks, their hulls stained with fish blood and filth. You see fishermen gutting eels, children filling pails, a girl washing linens in water you'd never dare drink. And drifting by the far bank, don't look too long, a shape. Swollen. Human. The current doesn't pause for grief. You breathe through your mouth and walk faster. There's an inn just beyond the market, its sign swinging with a squeak that seems louder than it should. The place is lopsided, like it's been arguing with gravity for a while. The innkeeper leans in the doorway, a cloth wrapped over her nose. You've seen that look before, not cruelty, just weary suspicion. Everyone's afraid to be the next host to death. You offer coin. She takes it with gloved hands. Room upstairs. No fever, no questions. Understand. You nod, and you climb. The bed creaks under your weight. The sheets are damp, but not filthy. There's a small window, and through it, you watch smoke curl from chimneys across the river. You wonder how many families are still lighting fires. How many are gone already? Your sister curls beside you, already asleep. Her breath is slow and steady. For now. The charm from the midwife clinks softly in your pocket as you shift. You press it to your lips. Not because you think it's magic, but because pretending it might be is better than the nothingness waiting in the silence. It's strange how towns like this try to push back the plague, not with medicine or answers, but with instinct. With flower petals, burning rosemary, and bells that ring far too often. Some towns even nail their sick inside their homes, boards over windows like coffins upright. Not here, at least not yet. Still, you heard the whispers in the market, a merchant boat that arrived bloated with corpses. A monastery downriver, silent as stone. An entire street locked up in the night, doors sealed with wax. And yet, people keep trying. Washing hands with vinegar. Hanging dried orange peels in doorways. Carrying pomanders, tiny balls of scented spices, dangling like charms against invisible evil. Historians debate whether quarantine efforts like these towns imposed helped at all. Some records suggest they bought precious time. Others say they spread fear faster than plague itself. But in this moment, looking at your sister's sleeping face, you're just grateful for walls. For clean straw. For something to believe in, even if it smells like dried wormwood and lies. You close your eyes, and for a while, you drift. But you wake in the dark. It's the bell again. Another soul lost. You count the tolls, 4 this time. The inn's walls are thin enough to let sorrow pass through like wind. Someone sobs downstairs, muffled and broken. You sit up, fingers wrapped around your own chest like armor. You breathe in the sharp rosemary behind your ear, and you decide, tomorrow, you'll move again. You'll keep to the river, keep to the edge of the map. Because surviving this isn't just about staying alive. It's about staying human. The road south hugs the river like a nervous child clinging to its mother's skirts. You follow it because you have no other map, just word of mouth and the hope that somewhere, someone knows what to do. Your sister's fever stayed low last night. Her cheeks hold a little more color this morning. You tell yourself it's a good sign, even though hope now feels like a thread worn thin between your fingers. The sky overhead is overcast, but no rain yet. Just the soft hiss of wind through late summer reeds. It's strange how you start noticing these quiet things again. Wind, birdsong, the crunch of your boots on gravel. Life, in all its stubbornness, still dares to make noise. As you walk, you pass other travelers. A whole procession, really. Carts drawn by bony oxen, families bundled together, priests in tattered robes. They all share the same expression. Wary, tight-lipped, glancing sideways as if the plague might be hiding behind the next bush. You wave at a boy with a wooden sword tucked into his belt. He doesn't wave back, just stares. It's understandable. These days, trust isn't something people carry on their backs. By midday, you reach a crossroad village. It looks mostly intact, no boarded-up houses, no black flags fluttering over doors. That alone is cause for celebration. There's a woman selling flatbread near the well, and you trade a few dried mushrooms for 2 pieces. Your sister eats half of hers in 1 bite. You almost cry from the relief. The villagers here are doing something you haven't seen before. They're walking in circles around the chapel, chanting. Their eyes are closed, hands clasped, and voices trembling, not in harmony, but in desperation. You recognize it as a form of procession penitence, a desperate attempt to show God you're sorry enough to be spared. Historians still argue whether such rituals were encouraged by the church or sprang up from folk tradition. Some records say bishops led them, others say they were forbidden for causing unrest. Either way, you're watching one now. The priest leads barefoot, lashes across his back. He's bleeding, though whether from wounds or the weight of his people's fear, who can say? A woman sees you watching and hands you a candle stub. For your soul, she whispers, before turning back to the circle. You don't know what to do with it. But you hold it anyway. Here's the strange thing. This village, though small, though scared, has made a decision. They've chosen belief as their weapon. Not walls or herbs or vinegar-soaked cloths. Just the raw force of conviction. It's oddly beautiful in a terrifying sort of way. Later, in a quieter moment, you find the chapel door open and step inside. It smells of wax and wood and faint decay. The altar is bare, but the walls are covered in scratchings, prayers, names, drawings of saints, even little handprints in charcoal. Your sister presses hers beside them, her fingers trembling. Outside, the wind shifts. You hear a faint sound. Clapping? No, drumming. You follow it, of course. Because you've learned that ignoring strange sounds is the fastest way to become one. Down the next street, you find them. A band of men and women in robes, marching slowly, singing in Latin you don't understand. They wear masks, not the bird-beaked ones from city doctors, but simple cloth sacks with holes for eyes. And they carry whips. They are the flagellants. You've heard of them, of course. Most people have. Groups of believers who travel from town to town, punishing themselves to atone for the world's sins. The idea is, if enough people bleed, maybe God will stop punishing the rest. It's dramatic, sure, but in a time when medicine fails, drama starts to feel like strategy. One man stops and speaks to the crowd. He shouts about repentance, about the wrath of heaven, about cities that refused them and fell to disease within days. You're not sure whether to believe him, but you do notice how the villagers avert their eyes. Flagellants were controversial even in their own time. Some historians argue they spread the plague unknowingly as they traveled. Others say they brought people hope, rallied towns to action, reminded everyone of their common fate. Either way, you can't deny their presence feels heavy, like thunder with no lightning. You decide not to follow them. Instead, you and your sister sleep in the hayloft of a kind man's barn. He doesn't ask questions. He just says, "You look like you need quiet." And he's right. That night, your dreams are strange. You see yourself walking in endless circles. Not just around a chapel, but around your life, your choices, your fear. Each lap is lined with faces, some familiar, some gone, some never yours to know. And somewhere in the dream, you realize, this isn't about avoiding death. It's about learning how to walk with it beside you. When morning comes, the sky is clear. For once, your sister wakes humming a tune. She says she dreamed of bread ovens and geese. You laugh, and it feels like something new breaking open inside your chest. You set off again, the road stretching ahead like a question with no answer. But today, you carry a candle stub in one pocket and a handprint in your memory. And somehow, that feels like armor. The road climbs now, winding up a ridge of low, mossy hills. You feel it in your thighs, the steady pull of gravity trying to make you reconsider every step. But you don't. You've come too far for second thoughts, and anyway, the air smells better up here, pine and cold stone. It's the kind of air you imagine royalty breathes. Your sister walks behind you, still pale but stronger. She whistles a tune she insists is from a village fair you never attended. You let her have it. Sometimes a made-up memory is better than a real one with teeth. As you crest the hill, the view opens into a wide valley. Fields lie in careful rows, hedgerows trimmed, small cottages dotted like crusty loaves left to cool. It's alive. You blink just to make sure. This settlement isn't dead. Down in the valley, things seem to be working. You spot people tending to gardens, smoke curling from chimneys, children running between homes. And, most curious of all, someone hanging bundles of herbs on a line like laundry. Welcome to one of the rare, quarantine villages. Historians still debate how many of these self-isolated communities existed during the worst plague years. Some claim they were accidents of geography, small enough to stay unnoticed, remote enough to survive untouched. Others argue they practiced early forms of disease control, long before germ theory had so much as a name. Whatever the truth, you're seeing it now, a village that said no to visitors and yes to survival. At the edge of the valley, you're stopped by a man with a pitchfork and kind eyes. He doesn't look threatening, just firm. "We don't take strangers," he says. "You understand." You do. Really, you do. You've seen what happens when people stop saying no. But something about your sister changes his mind. Maybe it's the way she clutches your tunic, or the way her breathing hitches. Maybe he has a daughter. He sighs and gestures toward a shed just outside the gate. You can sleep there. But you don't come in. Not for 3 days. Quarantine. You're stunned. Not because it's cruel, but because it's organized. It's the first time anyone has shown actual planning since this whole nightmare began. There's even a wooden sign outside the shed with a crude drawing of a skull and the number 3. Someone cares enough to count. Inside the shed, it smells like old straw and fresh-cut wood. Not luxurious, but it might as well be a palace. There's even a bucket of water and a loaf of coarse bread left at the door after sunset. You and your sister eat in silence, each bite loud in the stillness. And for once, you feel safe adjacent. That night, you listen. Not just for danger, but for life. You hear laughter, soft footsteps, the occasional clink of a pail or the squeak of a gate. These people are not untouched by the world, but they have carved out a little silence inside the chaos. It's inspiring, slightly infuriating, and deeply comforting. In the morning, someone leaves a second loaf and a bundle of lavender tied with twine. That's when your sister says it, "We could stay." You want to say yes. You want it more than anything. But you also know you can't. See, this village only works because it says no. Because it draws a hard line. If everyone who wanted in were let in, the system would collapse in a heartbeat. It's a paradox that feels almost holy in its cruelty. The very act of self-preservation demands selfishness. Quarantine wasn't a word you heard much before. Now it's a prayer. One fringe historical tidbit. In some places, villagers used to build special plague huts on hillsides, where sick or suspicious travelers would live for 40 days. Hence the root word, quaranta, Italian for 40. Whether they were healed, died, or simply vanished, no one dared open those huts early. It wasn't mercy. It was math. You get 3 days. No more, no less. By the third morning, the bread is gone, the bucket empty. And a new sign appears, just a wooden X drawn in chalk. You know what it means. It's the gentlest rejection you'll ever receive. You don't argue. You wrap your sister in her cloak and step onto the path, leaving the lavender behind. Someone else may need it. As you leave the valley, you feel the difference. Not just the change in air or slope, but in mood. That village worked because it was a bubble. And bubbles, by nature, are doomed to pop. All you can do is hope theirs holds a little longer. You head west now. Not because you have a reason, but because the sun looks softer that way. Your sister doesn't speak for a while. Then she says, "We should make a sign." You glance back. What kind? One that says, "We passed through. We didn't hurt anything." You smile. It's a ridiculous idea. And it's exactly what you do. On a flat stone near the fork in the road, you use charcoal to draw your names. Just initials, really, and a little picture of the lavender bundle. No skulls. No warnings. Just a whisper in stone that 2 humans were here, and they did their best to carry nothing but breath. You walk on. The hills rise again. Somewhere ahead, another village waits, either to help or to hide. But for now, your boots feel lighter. And the lavender, though left behind, still lingers in the folds of your cloak. The wind stiffens as you climb, but you welcome it. It smells like rain and stone, and it dries the sweat that creeps down your back. Your sister walks more slowly now, but her color's better. The worst may be behind her, or maybe it's just that you're learning to tell when someone's pretending to be okay. A valuable skill these days. The path narrows between craggy outcrops. There's less green here, more gray. Sheep bones lie scattered near a dry streambed. Something, fox or famine, got to them first. You nudge one aside with your toe, and it rolls like dice in a game you never asked to play. At midday, you reach a crude signpost, the wood bleached and split. It reads, "Sanctuary, 1 mile." Underneath, in a different hand, someone has scrawled, "Not what you think." You keep walking. The sanctuary is a monastery. Or rather, it was. Tall stone walls rise before you, cloaked in ivy and blackbird song. The gates stand slightly open. Monasteries were supposed to be safe, holy places immune to the chaos outside. But you've learned better than to believe in absolutes. And the fact that the door is ajar. not promising. You step through the gate, one hand on the hilt of your belt knife. The courtyard inside is silent. A few chickens scratch around a half-collapsed fountain. You see a cloaked figure far off, bent, sweeping, or maybe praying. The monk who finds you has a face that looks carved from driftwood, wrinkled but calm. He doesn't ask questions. Just gestures for you to follow. Monasteries were often more than religious centers. They were hospitals, libraries, and farms all at once. During plagues, they became strange hybrids, part shelter, part triage center, part graveyard. This one is no exception. The main hall smells like thyme and vinegar, and along one wall, cots are spaced evenly, many empty, a few occupied. You don't ask what's wrong with the people on them. You don't need to. The monk gives your sister a thick broth that smells like onions and hope. He points you toward a basin of water and a small cot beside a shuttered window. It's the best welcome you've had in weeks. As you rest, you notice something. The walls are painted. Not just with saints and angels, but with images of farming, healing, even dancing. One corner shows a man giving bread to a skeleton. Another shows a rooster standing on a bishop's head. Humor, the monk says, appearing beside you. Even death can't stand it. Historians still argue whether monks helped or hindered the plague effort. Some stayed and cared for the sick. Many died as a result. Others fled, locking church doors behind them. And a few, like the one before you, created a strange kind of middle path. Limited sanctuary, strict rules, and medicinal experiments that would make a modern pharmacist scream. In a dusty alcove, you find shelves stacked with jars, dried herbs, pickled roots, vials of cloudy liquid. The monk catches your gaze and explains, Angelica, valerian, foxglove. Don't mix that last one with beer unless you want to hear colors. You laugh. Genuinely. It feels good. You volunteer to help. It's not much, washing bedding, fetching firewood, but it feels like penance for surviving. One quirky tidbit. Some monastic apothecaries actually kept little plague manuals, handwritten guides of trial and error recipes for fighting the pestilence. One bizarre recipe you glimpse includes crushed emerald, snail slime, and wine blessed by 3 different priests. You don't ask what it was for. Maybe glowing in the dark. That night, the monastery sings. Not a formal service, more like murmured chants echoing through the stone. You sit in the hallway, your sister asleep beside you, and listen to voices rise and fall like waves. You don't know the words. But you don't need to. The music isn't about faith. It's about sound filling space, pushing back against silence. You wonder if that's what religion really is, organized resistance to fear. In the morning, the monk sits with you under an ancient tree. He tells you something you can't unhear. The plague takes. But sometimes, it leaves behind silence. And in that silence, we remember who we were before. You nod. Because that silence has lived in you for weeks now. He presses something into your hand, a sprig of dried rosemary. For memory, he says. You don't ask if he means yours or his. You stay 2 more days. The monastery doesn't ask for payment. But you leave your boots, worn through at the toes, on the steps of the chapel. You walk away barefoot, hoping it counts as gratitude. Your sister doesn't look back. She hums a piece of the chant from the night before. The melody trails behind you like incense. Ahead, the trees thin. The road forks. To the left, a walled town, flags fluttering. To the right, forest, deep and dark. You choose the forest. Because flags these days are more likely to hide smoke than celebration. Because towns mean crowds. And you've learned what crowds invite. As you disappear into the woods, you glance at the rosemary in your pocket. Still fragrant. Still whole. Still with you. You push through the underbrush, brushing away gnats and twigs, following no path but the sun and instinct. The forest feels older than the plague, older than anything human. The air hums with unseen life, a green breath exhaled by centuries of roots and decay. It smells like damp moss, old bark, and something faintly metallic, like forgotten coins. You're deep enough now that the world behind feels like a rumor. The monastery. The dead villages. Even the moaning from that cart back in the market square, they're echoes in your muscles, not in your ears. Your sister walks beside you, stronger. Her eyes don't dart as much anymore. She even picks a flower and sticks it behind her ear. You want to laugh, but the sound would feel too loud here. You begin to notice signs, literal and otherwise. A line of feathers tied to a tree trunk. Stones arranged in a spiral. A rabbit skull hanging by a bit of frayed ribbon. Witch marks, probably. Protection charms. Or maybe warnings. Historians still argue whether such forest talismans were made by wise women, local superstitions, or desperate survivors inventing meaning out of madness. You don't touch them. Eventually, you reach a glade where the sunlight filters through like stained glass. A low hut squats at its center, half buried in ivy. Smoke curls from its chimney. A woman kneels beside a patch of lavender, her back to you. She wears a dress made of mismatched fabric, the kind stitched over decades, not seasons. You approach slowly, your hand raised, not out of fear, but respect. She speaks without turning. You smell like thyme and vinegar. The monks fed you well. You blink. How did you? I've buried 3 plague brothers in the last 2 months. I know the scent of that place. She turns. Her face is deeply lined, and her eyes shimmer like still water. She nods toward your sister. Sit. Let me see her tongue. And just like that, you're inside. The hut is 1 part herbarium, 1 part kitchen, and 1 part museum of the strange. Dried lizards hang beside garlic braids. A cat with only 3 legs watches you from a shelf. The woman, she never gives her name, makes a tonic from juniper berries, onion peel, and rainwater collected on Midsummer's Eve. Your sister drinks it without complaint. Brave, considering the smell. She gives you both nettle soup and something crunchy that might be roasted beetle. Protein, she says, winking. You chew slowly and pretend not to gag. Forest healers, sometimes called cunning women or hedge witches, were often the first line of defense when official medicine failed. While university-trained doctors recommended bloodletting or carrying crushed sapphires in your armpit, these women used practical, sometimes bizarre, remedies passed down through oral tradition. The woman hands you a pouch of herbs. For fever, she says. And for dreaming. Not all fevers are from illness. One quirky tidbit? Some healers believed plague demons could be distracted with riddles. They'd carve strange symbols on doorposts, not to ward off spirits, but to confuse them. If death can't read your name, the woman says, maybe he walks past. You sleep that night on a bed of straw and furs. The forest hums all around, crickets and owls in some ancient harmony. In the dream that comes, you're in a village made entirely of mirrors. Every turn shows you, not as you are, but as you could have been. Healthy, whole, clean. You wake with tears in your eyes and a single word in your mouth. Enough. In the morning, the woman gives you a choice. Head north toward the coast, where ships wait for anyone willing to scrub decks for bread, or east, toward the hills, where rumors whisper of isolated communities untouched by plague. Neither sounds ideal. But staying isn't an option. The woman warns you, this forest is a temporary kindness. It does not keep the living. You nod. You already knew. You take the eastern path. The hills. It rains all that day. Cold, steady, unrelenting. But you don't mind. It washes away sweat, old fear, even some of the memories you've been carrying like stones in your gut. A few miles in, you stumble across a field of standing stones, tall, weather-worn, arranged in a circle. Not Roman. Not even Saxon. Older. Much older. You walk between them, hand brushing their rough surfaces. Your sister says, I feel like we're being watched. You say, we are. But not by anything alive. Scholars debate whether such sites held spiritual significance during the plague. Were they places of pagan comfort? Forgotten power? Or just familiar landmarks when the world lost shape? One thing's certain, Even now, they radiate something. Not warmth, exactly, but gravity. You feel steadied, as if the earth itself is telling you, you're still here. That night, you camp beneath an old oak. The sky is black, but the stars are crisp and unflickering. You roast a root vegetable the forest woman gave you, something that smells like garlic but tastes like mint and regret. You share the last of the dried apples. And then, before sleep, your sister says something strange. I think the plague made me believe in ghosts. You ask her what she means. She says, I don't see the dead. I just feel like they're watching us live. Like they're waiting to see if we do anything better with the second chance. You don't reply. Not because you disagree, but because you've thought the same thing too. And right now, the only way to answer the dead is to keep walking. The hills rise like sleeping giants ahead of you, soft-backed, heavy, quiet. You climb them slowly, your boots slick with mud, your legs protesting with every step. But you've come this far, and something about elevation makes your lungs feel hopeful. Like maybe you're climbing out of the sickness, inch by inch, foot by foot. The path isn't marked. Nothing is. But you follow the signs that only the desperate know how to read. Bent grass, a crumbled bit of hearthstone where a cottage once stood, the outline of a long cold fire pit. Evidence that people passed here, survivors, maybe even settlers. You sleep in a sheepfold one night, tucked in straw and the lingering scent of wool. The stars overhead twinkle like gossiping ancestors, and your sister swears she saw one fall and land in a tree. You tell her it's a blessing. A falling star is always a sign. Of what, you don't say. Superstition does the heavy lifting when logic fails. The next morning, you find them. A village. Not big, maybe a dozen homes, but intact. Intact enough to seem almost suspicious. There are chickens. A garden with actual vegetables. People moving around, warily, like deer that haven't decided whether to trust you or bolt into the trees. You step into the open and raise your arms slowly. No weapons. Just travel-worn clothes and a tired wave. Your sister follows, clutching her herb pouch tight. You look like every frightened traveler who's stumbled in from the edge of the world, and in this age, that's exactly what you are. A man with a spear greets you first. Then a woman with a baby on her hip. She doesn't speak at first, just looks you up and down like she's counting bones. Then she says, "What year is it?" You blink. 1349, I think. She looks at the man. He nods, and something in his shoulders releases. Maybe they were holding their breath, just like you. You're allowed to stay the night. One night. No promises after that. Inside their meeting hut, if you can call it that, really just a wide room with a table and a lot of eyes, you learn the rules. This is a quarantine village. Self-imposed. They cut themselves off when the rumors started. No one comes in. No one leaves. Except maybe once a month, one person goes down the hill in a mask and robe and trades dried meat for salt or news. That person is currently dead. Which is why they're suspicious of you. You tell your story. Not all of it, just enough. The abbey, the forest, the road. They ask no questions about names or family. It's safer that way. And just like that, you're part of something again. Not quite inside, but not fully outside. One mainstream historical fact? During the worst years of the plague, some communities really did isolate themselves completely. Eam in England is the famous one. They voluntarily shut their borders and sacrificed themselves to protect neighboring towns. Historians still debate whether these efforts actually worked or were just stories stitched together after the fact to give the horror some moral shape. Here, in your new maybe home, it seems to be working. Meals are shared outside. No one enters another's house unless invited, and even then, you wash in vinegar first. They have a bell they ring when someone is sick, and when someone dies. It's rung twice since you arrived. You learn how to dig clay from the hillside and shape it into bowls. Your sister helps in the garden, pulling weeds beside an old woman who speaks in proverbs and spits every time someone says the word rat. One quirky tidbit? This village keeps ferrets. Long, slinky, curious creatures that zip between houses and sniff at visitors. They warn us, someone tells you. When they stop eating, we know something's wrong. Apparently, the ferrets refused food 2 days before the last death. Maybe it's nonsense. Maybe it's genius. The nights grow colder. The hills begin to frost. You sleep beside a tiny hearth, listening to the crackle of dried peat and the whistle of the wind sneaking through thatch. You've begun to dream of normal things again. Bread. Music. A cat curled on a windowsill. Then one morning, a child in the village wakes with a fever. The bell rings. Panic spreads faster than the illness. Families lock doors. Food deliveries are left at thresholds. The child's family becomes untouchable overnight, as if grief is contagious too. And maybe it is. You're asked to help, because you're not quite one of them yet, and because you're already tainted by the world. You agree. Not out of bravery. Out of guilt, maybe. Out of tiredness. The child is no older than 7. She's burning up, murmuring about fireflies under the bed and a man with a crow's face. You dab her forehead with damp linen and whisper old prayers you don't believe anymore. Her mother watches from the doorway, unable to cross the chalk line drawn across the floor. The child lives. The fever breaks on the 4th day. You expect celebration. There isn't one. Just a quiet meal passed through the door, and a sense that the village has inhaled again. Later, someone slides you a loaf of bread with extra honey. A thank you, maybe. Or an apology. It's hard to tell. You begin to feel something unfamiliar. Rootedness. Not safety, let's not be ridiculous, but rhythm. Your muscles begin to trust the routine. Your sister even jokes once. An actual joke. About how you'll both get married to hill people and grow potatoes forever. You laugh too hard at that. Of course, things don't stay still for long. One morning, a traveler arrives. He wears a mask. Not a plague doctor mask, but something stranger, wooden, painted with red spirals. He doesn't speak much. Says he's headed farther east. But he carries news. The cities are collapsing. Some are turning on each other. In one town, they burn anyone with a cough. In another, they hold festivals to tempt the angels of death. Historians argue whether these stories were exaggerations or grim truths. The records are spotty, and rumor always outpaces fact. The traveler leaves before sunset. But something about him lingers. Like the smell of smoke after a fire. Or a door left cracked open in a storm. That night, your sister asks if you ever think about leaving again. You say no. And you almost believe it. You wake to the sound of voices, too many voices, and too close. You sit up fast, heart thudding, hands fumbling for your boots. Outside your door, villagers are gathered, whispering in the tents, hushed tones usually reserved for deaths or disappearances. But this time, it's neither. A child has gone missing. You step outside, squinting in the early dawn light. The fog clings low to the ground, and for a moment, everyone looks like ghosts. The missing girl's name is Elsie. She's 6, with wild blonde hair and a laugh that used to echo around the garden rows. She was last seen playing near the stream yesterday afternoon. Disaster is always patient. It waits until the illusion of safety has fully bloomed before tearing it away. A search party forms. You volunteer before your brain catches up. Your sister doesn't protest. You're stronger now, both of you. Quieter, but steadier. You wade through brambles and check rabbit holes and fallen logs. One of the older men, who used to be a tanner, swears he sees tiny footprints in the mud, but they vanish under the oak roots. A woman starts crying around noon, and no one tries to stop her. Mainstream historical fact here. Children did go missing during the plague years. Not just a sickness, but into the woods, away from fear and sorrow. Sometimes parents abandoned them, thinking they were cursed. Other times, children simply wandered and never came back. The era was as cruel to innocence as it was to strength. You find Elsie by accident, curled beneath a heap of branches, half asleep and mumbling. She's not hurt. Just cold. She says she followed a deer and forgot the way back. You carry her home on your back, the heat of her forehead against your neck like a second heartbeat. The village breathes again. It's a sound you've come to know, the collective sigh when something doesn't end in horror. That night, they hold a feast. Not a grand one. This isn't the kind of place where people waste, but there's a little extra meat, and someone brings out a jug of cider that's been hiding under a floorboard for months. Your sister gets tipsy and sings a lullaby. A man you barely know tells a joke about a goose and a friar and messes up the punchline 3 times before giving up entirely. You almost forget the plague exists. Almost. But not quite. Because around the firelight, old scars flicker on faces. Eyes linger too long on coughs. And the bell, they moved it, you notice. It hangs closer now. Ready. Still, there's joy here. The kind that blooms under threat, like mushrooms after a storm. One quirky tidbit? The villagers have started carving tiny charms out of hazelnuts. They're supposed to ward off dreams about the dead. You find one under your pillow one morning. No one admits to leaving it, but it's there, smooth and cool and oddly comforting. You keep it in your pocket. Even if it's nonsense, it feels like armor. A few weeks later, you help build a wall. Nothing grand, just a low stack of stones marking the southern edge of the village. Someone says it's for peace of mind, but everyone knows it's for defense. Rumors of bandits are growing. The traveler with the wooden mask wasn't the last to come through. A man arrived last week claiming to be a monk, but he carried more knives than prayers. Historians still argue whether the widespread breakdown of order during the Black Death was inevitable or caused by human panic. Maybe both. When half the population disappears, so do the rules. The wall goes up slowly, and with it, the village changes. There's now a night watch. You take your turn. Hours staring into darkness, listening for anything that doesn't sound like wind. Your ears become sharp. Every fox is a threat. Every owl a messenger. Your sister, meanwhile, starts keeping records. She asks questions, writes down names, dates, dreams. A few people laugh, but most offer their stories willingly. Someone should remember, she says, and you nod. Memory is all that keeps the dead alive. Then, one evening, while gathering firewood, you hear music. Not birdsong, not wind. Flute. Faint and strange. Off-key and haunting. You freeze. The trees hold their breath with you. You follow it, not toward the sound, but away. You know better. You head home fast, barely looking back. By the time you return, your heart is pounding, and your hands are full of splinters. The music doesn't return. But you hear stories. Someone saw a figure in the woods, cloaked and still. Another heard laughter, high and thin, around the watermill that hasn't worked in years. You ask the old woman who spits at the word, rat, what she thinks. She spits again and says, some plagues walk on 2 legs. And that's it. Later that night, you can't sleep. You lie awake, staring at the thatched ceiling, wondering what kind of person becomes a monster when the world crumbles. Then you realize, maybe it's not always a person. Maybe it's just fear. A shadow you give shape to because it's easier than staring at nothing. You close your eyes and try to dream of safe things. Bread. Music. A cat on a windowsill. The wind howls outside. You don't fall asleep, but you do rest. And in the morning, the sky is clear. You rise earlier than usual, the clarity of the sky pulling you out before your stomach even remembers it's empty. The morning air tastes like iron and frost. Dew beads on every surface, catching the light like tiny stars clinging to the earth. You stretch your back, run a hand over your face, and decide, today, you're going hunting. Not with weapons, you don't have the stomach for traps anymore. You carry a basket. Mushrooms, berries, roots, whatever the forest hasn't forgotten how to give. You tell no one where you're going. Not to be secretive. Just quiet. There are days when words feel heavy. You walk south, where the trees grow closer together, and the sun has to beg its way through the canopy. It's silent enough here that you can hear your own heartbeat. The rhythm comforts you, reminds you you're still tethered to something living. You pass the ruins of an old stone house, crumbled like a memory someone gave up on. A pair of foxes dart out when you approach, startled. They disappear into brush too thick for you to follow. And then, beneath a willow, you find something. Bones. Human. Long bleached. Small. You don't scream. You don't run. You kneel, touch the edge of a broken rib with 2 fingers, and whisper a name that might have once belonged to someone. There's a quiet cruelty to finding death when you're searching for food. You cover the bones. Not with earth, you have no shovel, but with stones, leaves, your cloak. Enough to mean something. Maybe enough to mean everything. Mainstream historical fact. Burial practices collapsed during the height of the Black Death. With death coming too fast and too often, mass graves, plague pits, became common. But outside towns, in the forests and fields, the dead simply vanished into the landscape. Peasants buried loved ones where they fell, or not at all. When you return to the village, you find your sister sitting with the traveler. Yes, that traveler. The one who arrived wearing a wooden mask. He's taken it off. His face is older than you expected, creased and strange, but not unkind. He speaks softly, and people listen. No one remembers inviting him to stay, yet no one's asked him to leave, either. He's a storyteller, he says. A collector of endings. Quirky tidbit here. Some plague survivors believed that stories themselves could keep sickness away. That as long as someone told tales, the plague couldn't claim the final word. So, traveling storytellers were treated with a strange mix of suspicion and reverence. Part entertainer, part exorcist. He tells one that night by the fire. It's about a shepherd who fell asleep for 100 years and woke to find his flock turned to stone. He speaks in rhythms, with pauses just long enough for your breath to catch. You know it's just a tale, but your skin prickles anyway. Your sister watches him the way she watches the sky before a storm. Later, she tells you something strange. He doesn't blink, she whispers. Not once. You laugh it off. Mostly. The next day, the traveler is gone. No one saw him leave. No one knows what direction he went. His cup is still on the table. His bed is undisturbed. Historians still argue whether plague-time superstitions were coping mechanisms or cultural madness. Likely both. When science fails and priests run, the only weapon left is imagination. You help clean the fire pit. The ashes are thick with old wood and something that smells faintly like herbs. Someone says he might have been a healer. Someone else says he wasn't real at all. That night, a woman goes into labor. You rush to her cottage with your sister. The midwife is already there, sleeves rolled, eyes sharp. You've never seen a child born. You don't expect the screaming. It goes on for hours. Sweat, blood, prayer. You hold a cloth to the woman's forehead and whisper nonsense songs from when you were little. Anything to keep her from hearing her own terror. When the baby finally arrives, the air changes. It's not joy, not yet, but the possibility of joy. The baby is a girl, red and wrinkled and loud. That first cry cuts through the silence like a bell that's been waiting all season to ring. You step outside and sit hard on the ground. The stars are out. You realize you haven't looked up in days. You remember the bones in the forest, the music that wasn't wind, the traveler who never blinked. You remember Elsie's arms around your neck and the way your sister laughed over cider. And you think, this is the shape of survival. Not the strength to fight. Not even the cleverness to escape. But the stubbornness to stay. You stay. Through the births, the ghosts, the hunger. You stay because someone has to know how the story ends. A week later, a merchant arrives. Yes, a real one. Cart and all. He comes down the western trail with wheels that groan and a flagon of wine strapped to his saddle. People gather, stunned. It's like seeing a myth roll into town. Trade has returned. A trickle, not a flood, but still, news. Barter. Connection. You trade for salt. He trades for dried herbs, bone needles, and your sister's writing. He calls it charmingly local. She flushes, half proud, half shy. He tells of other villages. Some gone, some rebuilt. A port town where no one touches anyone else, and a mountain keep where no one has coughed in months. He says hope is traveling with him, hidden somewhere between his boots and his blankets. When he leaves, he promises to return. You're not sure you believe him, but you want to. That night, you hang your hazelnut charm above your bed. The wind is soft. Your sister snores. And for the first time in what feels like centuries, you let yourself imagine a future. Just a small one. A garden. A cat. A day without watching for signs of sickness. You close your eyes and dream of sunlight on stones. The kind used for building, not burying. Spring arrives slowly, like a reluctant guest. The snow doesn't vanish all at once but in patches, revealing the black earth beneath in uneven scars. You don't trust it. Not at first. But your sister does. She wakes you early one morning, dirt already on her hands, a basket of seeds at her side. We should plant, she says. The ground's soft enough. You follow her without arguing. You begin with onions, then potatoes, beans next. Nothing extravagant, just what you know might live. Then she presses a handful of calendula seeds into your palm. For the skin, she murmurs. For the eyes. For the healing. But you both know what it really means. It's for the dead. The ones you couldn't bury properly. The ones whose names faded before their echoes did. Historical note, after the plague years, survivors planted more than food, they planted meaning. Calendula, lavender, and rosemary were common in gardens not only for their uses but for their colors and scent, their ability to reclaim space from rot. These gardens weren't just practical, they were emotional medicine. Then, something strange happens. The children return. Not all at once. First, a girl with braids and burned shoes. Then a boy with a hollow stare who refuses to speak but shadows your every step. Some arrive with ragged families, others on their own, faces too old for their years. They don't ask questions. They just start living again. You find yourself teaching one to bait a fishing hook. He has only 7 fingers and a strange way of listening, as if sound enters him sideways. Another girl clings to your sister, begging to learn the alphabet, tracing crooked letters into the dirt with a stick. You don't speak to them of the worst nights. You don't tell them about the winter screams or the shallow graves. You let them run. You let them build forts from rubble and chase shadows into laughter. You let them remember how to be alive first. One evening, as the sky bruises toward dusk, your sister stares into the hearth. Sometimes, she says quietly, I dream of Mother. Only she's younger than I am now. You don't know what to say. You wait. She never says much. But last night, she looked at me and said not to rush grief. That sorrow has its own timing. Then she turns to you with a half smile. She also said you need to cut your hair. You both laugh, harder than you should. It feels strange. It feels necessary. Historical aside, after widespread death, dreams of lost family members were common and taken seriously. People called them visitations, not illusions. Some believed the dead returned to offer wisdom. Others believed it was the mind trying to make meaning from ruin. In both cases, it helped people continue. The season shifts again. You rebuild a fence. A young man, Luke, with a patched green cloak and hands like carved stone, helps without being asked. He says little at first. Then, more. His story comes in pieces. His mother, a convent. His father, a silence. He came from the west, following the smoke trails of survival. You notice he keeps finding reasons to stay. One morning, you find a scrap of parchment on your windowsill. A poem. Clumsy. Honest. It makes your ears burn and your chest ache. You read it twice before folding it into your pocket. And then one morning, a crow flies in through your open window. Not crashing, gliding. It circles once, brushes the rafters with its wing, and flies straight back out. You and your sister freeze. Then she says, "Was that an omen?" You offer. "I was going to say rude." But later, when you pull your boots on, there's a feather tucked inside. Clean. Curved. Left like a message. You carry it with you for days. Not because you believe, but because you want to. In a world that forgot kindness, even a feather can be a sign of grace. Historical footnote: across Europe, plague survivors reimagined animals as divine messengers. Crows became symbols of both death and rebirth. A lone bird appearing indoors might be seen as a warning, or a reminder that not everything silent is lifeless. You tie the feather to the fence. The calendula is blooming. Luke smiles more. The children sing without fear. Your sister writes songs again, strange ones, full of made-up words and rhythms that belong to no country. Then one night, an old fiddler wanders into town. No one knows where he came from, only that his fingers still remember music. He plays under a sky full of stars, and everyone gathers. You sing. The children dance. Even the silence seems to sway. It's a song no one has heard before, and somehow, everyone knows the words. And something inside you lifts, slowly, shyly, like a wound testing its own scar. You remember everything. The graves in the frost. Elsie's final breath. The mask. The night you almost didn't survive. But the remembering no longer bleeds. It simply is. A part of you. A story you lived through, not a weight you must keep carrying. When someone asks you, years from now, what it was like during the plague, you won't speak of numbers. You won't list names. You'll say, "It was a winter so long we forgot the sun's name. A silence so wide, it swallowed prayer. But still, somehow, we learned how to sing again." The morning light breaks differently when you're not sure what tomorrow holds. Your hands, hardened by years of toil, now rebuild not for survival alone, but for meaning. The air is still heavy with memory. Ashes. Names. Empty chairs. And yet here you are, placing one stone on another, lifting beams, mending walls. Rebuilding isn't just about timber or thatching, it's about creating space for something to live again. Your village, or what's left of it, carries on. The chapel roof was the first to be repaired. Not because people were suddenly devout again, but because it had always been the tallest place to keep dry. Luke climbed up there with a rope made of braided linens and a prayer he half remembered from before the plague. You watched him from below, wondering if he was tempting fate or defying it. The baker's old house is cleared out next. The stench of rot is gone, replaced by the dry scent of dust and hope. You and your sister take turns gutting the inside. It'll be a storage hall for now, or maybe a meeting place. Maybe even a school, someday, if children return in enough numbers. You don't dare say that aloud. When night comes, you sit by the fire with the others. There's no feast. Just boiled barley and stories. But for the first time, the stories aren't only about death. They're about the woodcutter who swears he saw a deer with silver antlers. The widow who taught herself to read with a torn psalter. The child who now hums lullabies in the language of the dead, like a ghost singer who chose to stay. There's a strange kind of silence in the village now. Not empty, but deep. Like the soil after harvest. Waiting. You feel it in your chest. In your bones. You've learned to recognize these spaces where something new might grow. A young man from a nearby hamlet arrives with a cart of bricks and a nervous smile. He says he heard this village is building again. You eye him suspiciously at first, but the way he stacks the bricks, careful, methodical, like he's placing pieces of his own past, softens you. By week's end, he sleeps near the well and jokes about staying. There's no official council. No rules scrawled in ink. But each rebuilt door, each patched roof, is a vote. We choose to remain. We choose to begin again. Some things can't be rebuilt. You learn this quickly. Your friend Anna won't speak. Her voice, once bright and constant, is now just her eyes. She tends to the herbs, gathers mint and valerian, tends to the old grave markers with trembling fingers. No one asks her to explain. And yet the children laugh again. Their joy is raw, erratic, like flame in wind, but it's real. You catch them playing among the ruins of the old mill. One dares the others to touch the scorched brick, as though it might still bite. They scream, they run, they return. Life has begun again without asking for permission. One evening, a new song drifts across the square. You don't know who started it. Perhaps the trader who came from the coast with lemons and cloth. Or the young woman with half her hair shaved, who said nothing for 2 days and then started teaching the children how to dye thread with berries. The song is strange, melancholy, but not broken. It speaks of river fog and hands clasped in darkness, of returning spring and the dead who walk with you, not to haunt, but to witness. You hum it in your sleep. Each house has a corner where no one sits. Places left for the ones who didn't return. And yet even these corners are swept. Honored. Not abandoned. Your dreams are changing, too. No longer filled with rats or fever or unending roads. Now you dream of an orchard that never dies, of towers rising again from buried stones, of children learning your name generations from now and not believing your stories could be real. You find yourself writing more. Not just ledgers or prayers, but reflections. Thoughts you didn't know you had. Things you wish you'd said to those now gone. You place the pages in jars, bury them beneath stones, not for safekeeping, but for release. One evening, your sister looks at the sky and says, "Maybe they're watching." You don't ask who. You just nod. Maybe they are. And if they are, may they see what you've built. Just when the earth starts to feel warm again and children dare to chase butterflies between the ruins, it returns. Not as a scream. Not even as a rumor at first. Just a cough. A dry, dragging cough. It comes from the boy who always sat by the well, whittling wood. The same boy who had survived last time, somehow, when his entire family fell. This time, the sound halts you mid-step. You pretend not to notice. You hope it's just the dust. You pretend it's not what it is. But deep down, your bones remember. The village goes quiet again, not with the shocked stillness of first loss, but with a grim rehearsal. The faces around you turn, not panicked, but weary. No one screams. No one runs. But they begin to move differently. Carefully. Measured. The bread is left at the doors again. People pass each other without touch. You feel the quiet beginning to grow teeth. Someone mentions the term, second wave, like it's a season. It almost feels that way. Inevitable, expected, but cruel in its return. The elders say it might be milder. Others whisper this strain is smarter. All you know is, it is back. The young man who helped you stack bricks is the first to vanish. One morning, he's too tired to lift a stone. By nightfall, he's burning up in a cot under the cart he arrived in. You bring him broth, soaked linens, prayers. None of it helps. He's buried before the week's end. The fear this time is less frantic, but deeper, more rooted. Like mold returning to an old wall you swore was clean. It spreads faster this round. The girl who sang lullabies loses her voice. The baker's new apprentice collapses during a delivery. You stop counting. It doesn't help. There is no blame this time. No witch hunts. No accusations of poisoned wells or star-crossed births. Just a shared knowing. The villagers look at each other as if to say, "So it's you again." Like recognizing an old thief come back for more. You revive the vinegar rags, the rosemary bundles, the desperate charms. Not because they work, but because they're ritual. And rituals help us feel less helpless. The chapel bells ring again, but not for prayer. They toll for silence. To mark the hours. To remind the living that they are still, for now, on this side of breath. You sleep in short shifts, next to the door, half-dressed in case someone knocks for help. They rarely do. Everyone knows by now how little can be done. And still, you hope. It isn't as brutal as the first time, but it cuts differently. The second wave takes the kind ones. The midwife who never married. The blind man who remembered everyone's birthdays. The boy who carved birds from walnut shells. It's as if the plague, this time, chooses more carefully. Not just quantity but quality. You try not to let bitterness in. You fail. And yet, something's different now. The people don't shatter the way they did before. They bend. They cry. But they don't break. You hear them muttering things like, "We've been through worse," and "We know what to do this time." They keep walking. Keep building. Even as the skies dim again, hammers still ring out. Fires are still stoked. Bread is still needed. You find yourself in the garden again, replanting herbs. Not because they'll cure anyone, but because planting is what you do when you want the future to exist. One night, your sister wakes you to say she heard singing from the woods. You step outside, heart racing. And there, in the trees, are 3 figures, children maybe, wearing masks of leaves, holding candles, humming the old song. It's not eerie. It's sacred. The dead are close now. You feel them in the chill wind, in the flicker of candles, in the way your hands remember how to hold without shaking. They walk with you, not as ghosts, but as echoes of resilience. They are part of the rebuild now. The second wave fades more quietly than the first. Not with a bang, but a long exhale. You count fewer graves this time. More survivors emerge, weak but standing. The goats return to the fields. The forge starts again, timid sparks in the gloom. And one morning, the boy at the well coughs. But this time, it's a laugh hiding behind it. You don't trust it yet. You don't dare. But still, you allow yourself a half smile. And for the first time in months, you open the shutters. The light doesn't blind you this time. It feels earned. The plague has not won. Not really. You are still here. There are fewer of you, yes. Faces that once crowded the harvest table are now faded memories, preserved in prayer and stories. The laughter that once echoed from the fields is quieter now, like the wind moving through old straw. But it's there. Faint, real, and stubborn. You wake earlier than usual, not because of fear, but because of purpose. The birds are singing again, or perhaps you can finally hear them. The sun spills across your dirt floor, touching the edge of your old boots. The same boots that walked through ash, blood, and burial. And yet, somehow, did not stop walking. You step outside. The village looks different now. Not cleaner, it's still muddy, still patched together with salvaged wood and hope, but it breathes differently. The houses lean toward each other, stitched together by shared grief and survival. Every wall, every rooftop, every fence post tells a story of rebuilding with bare hands and unbroken hearts. You join the others in the square. No one says much, but they nod. That nod means more than 100 words. We made it. We remember. We continue. Children chase each other again. Carefully, yes, but with real giggles. Someone has tied ribbons to a goat's horns, and you chuckle for the first time in weeks. A cart rolls past with fresh thatch and loaves stacked like treasures. You trade your last dried apples for a pot of honey, not out of need, but for sweetness. You realize you crave it again. Later, you visit the edge of the forest where the new chapel is being built. It's simple, stone, wood, no carvings yet, but it rises from the ground like a prayer. You help place the next stone. Your fingers bleed a little. You smile. In the evenings, by firelight, you teach the young ones how to grind herbs and say old songs. They listen, not because they understand yet, but because you're still here to teach them. You tell them about the death fog, about vinegar-soaked masks, about love surviving on breadcrumbs and candle ends. They stare, wide-eyed. One girl even asks if you're making it up. You just laugh. Not bitterly this time. Softly, with peace. The earth is scarred, but it blooms. The air still carries stories, but also bees. You plant a lavender bush near your door, not to ward off disease, but to welcome life. Some nights, dreams still come, the hard ones. You see faces of those who didn't make it. You hear coughing in silence. But now you know what to do when you wake up gasping. You light a candle. You whisper their names. You keep going. That's how survival works. It's not just avoiding death. It's choosing life over and over again, even when it's hard, even when it's slow, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. You aren't who you were before the plague. None of you are. But you are something else now. Tougher, kinder, quieter, perhaps. But filled with a light that disease cannot touch. And so you carry on. With lavender at your window. With bread in your hands. With ghosts in your memory. With love stitched into every single thing you touch. You peasant, miracle that you are, survived. So now, traveler, rest your head. Let the candles dim. Let the muddy roads fade into mist. Let the echoes of coughs and church bells dissolve into the hush of dreams. You've walked 1,000 lives tonight, through stench and sorrow, through laughter and loss. You've seen death's face and still dared to plant lavender by your door. You, peasant of the plague years, have stood in the shadow of the darkest history, and reached toward light. This world, so battered and burned, still holds morning. Still holds bread. Still holds a reason to breathe deep and begin again. Close your eyes now. Let the fire's last crackle be your lullaby. You have earned your rest, not just for surviving, but for hoping, for rebuilding, for loving in the ruins. Tomorrow may be hard, but tonight, you sleep like the miracle you are. Sweet dreams.